Hi, this is Michael from Neo4j. I work as an engineer on Neo4j's OGM, Spring Data integration and a couple of other things. We've been working now together with the Quarkus team since 2019 to bring Neo4j to Quarkus. The Neo4j Quarkus extension has been in Quarkus since version 1 and has evolved ever since. This original extension gives you the Neo4j Java driver with all its options configurable through Quarkus, which works of course in both JVM and native mode. You can think of that driver as on the same layer as a JDBC driver. It supports issuing Cypher queries of all kinds, converting from Neo4j types to Java types back and forth, and of course transactions, which are the usual things you expect from a driver. Today, I'm very happy to add another extension to the mix, the Neo4j-OGM Quarkus extension. Neo4j-OGM is an object graph mapping framework that used to power Spring Data Neo4j for a long time, and it comes to Quarkus now. This new extension makes it possible to use Neo4j-OGM inside a Quarkus application without the need to manually scan for classes, registering entity classes for reflection, and so much. And of course, this works also in JVM and native mode. Together with one other Neo4j Labs project called Neo4j Migrations, which is a database refactoring tool, you get the best possible Neo4j experience on Quarkus. Let me show how this works with our integration test setup. Of the project I'm going to show you in a sec. I have only one dependency highlighted here, which is the Neo4j-OGM Quarkus dependency. This is the starting point of the whole integration, and to make things clearer, let's have a look at the dependency tree, not only the plain text. What we see here is Quarkus Neo4j, the official Quarkiverse extension for Neo4j is sitting in the middle and providing the groundwork for Neo4j-OGM Quarkus, and the groundwork being first of all the low-level connectivity in form of the Neo4j Java driver. Neo4j-OGM Quarkus in turn brings the bits and pieces of Neo4j-OGM itself, which is the core product, support for native types. This does not mean GraalVM binary native types, but native types to Neo4j the database. And the bold driver naming is a bit odd because this driver is much more higher level than the driver named here. It provides all the bits and pieces of object mapping for you. In addition, we have Neo4j Migration Quarkus. This is a database refactoring tool that runs our Cypher scripts for us in the integration test, providing all the test data. Of course, it depends also on the official Quarkus Neo4j extension because it needs the Neo4j Java driver. And with that knowledge, jump over to how this looks in this project. First of all, we have an application.properties file in which we configure the packages that should be scanned by Neo4j-OGM Quarkus. We want to make sure that we only use native types, meaning that we store a date as a date in the database and so on. Then we have two properties for migrations. They shouldn't be enabled by default. And there's a path where to look for migrations. During tests, I don't want developer service. We will get to that in a second, what this is. But I want migrations enabled during test. I told you so before. These are our scripts that create a couple of indexes and some example data. In prod then, migrations should be enabled. Next on the list are Neo4j-OGM entities. People using OGM for a while now know these annotations, pretty much like entities in Hibernate and other things. We call them node entities. The labels of those things in the graph are directly derived from the class name, in this case movie. We haven't assigned a D, the title of a movie. So Neo4j's thing is a bit of a movie graph that comes usually with the database itself. And then there are a couple of properties and relationships to people. Here we have a list of actors in that movie and the list of directors. I created a movie repository on top of that. That repository takes in a Neo4j-OGM session factory. The whole thing is application scoped, so it lives for a while. The session inside Neo4j-OGM is the transaction boundary, so we are fine here in opening in a session, returning a collection of all the movies we can find. We put that into use in a JAX-RS resource named movie resource, living in a request scope under a given path, having one endpoint returning all the movies. I don't have Neo4j running on my machine right now. I only have my EDA, obviously, and the JDK installed. Is this enough to get this up and running? Let's see this to life. I don't have a running Neo4j instance on my machine. Instead, I'm going to make use of the Quarkus dev services. Dev services in its core are provided by Quarkus. The Quarkus Neo4j extension makes sure that our tooling works well with them. So I'm going to start this project by mvn Quarkus dev, and it will take a while, not that long, because it will bring up a Docker instance for me automatically and reconfigure my Quarkus application to use that Docker instance of Neo4j. So Neo4j is starting right now. Done, and now the rest of the application starts to boot as well. There's some information logged that you can access Neo4j via the Cypher shell, and also the web URL is logged, but we're not going to do this. We are going to hit D for please take me to the developer UI of Quarkus. So that UI comes from Quarkus itself. We could address the whole configuration of the application or have a look at all the CDI dependency beans, but we are interested in those three tiles: Neo4j client, migrations, and OGM. First of all, everything could be reconfigured on the fly. For example, the password and the username and the URLs. That wizard word here indicates that those things have been set by the developer services. So this has been done for you because there was no other configuration and the system figured out there was no Neo4j running on my machine. Of course, you can configure all the bells and whistles of the drivers itself too. If I would change anything here, the application would restart. This link is interesting. It was contributed by one of the Quarkus people, Philip Krüger. The link directly takes me to the web shell of the Neo4j instance that the developer services has been brought up by us. So I'm going to use password here. Let's check the database. Nothing in there yet, and that's what is expected because I've showed you that migrations have been disabled during development because I want to make sure there's nothing in there. So we could now, for example, call the movies endpoint from our own applications as well. If I do this, there's no data. Let's head back to the developer UI here and hit that migrations tooling here. Again, configurable, but let's see what's for the configured target database here. Gives you some information and it prints out what scripts are available. You see all of them are pending. We can now hit the migrate button and it applies all the migrations which are there. Take a while. It executed all the scripts and also the callbacks, creating test data for us. Going back to the Neo4j browser, and it already refreshed and it sees there is now the list of applied migrations, of course stored in the graph as well. You can configure different schemes for that actually. And the list of movies and people. Let's hit the movie list. That's the graph view. Let's hit birdcage. You find the people acted in there and so on. Let's see, can expand this as well. And right now, the REST endpoint we've written should return some data too. Just like that. I have a people resource as well, can add new people, just like that. Last but not least, this is Neo4j-OGM Quarkus. It has its own tile and it gives you some information which domain classes have been found during scanning and which are in use. So the movie, the actors and the people. And that's what I have for you to show. Enjoy Neo4j-OGM and Quarkus. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. You may have noticed that the light changed a bit. It took me a while to record those steps. I'm not the biggest expert in video production, as you may have noticed. I prefer the coding and architectural side of things. But anyway, let me sum this up. I think Neo4j is in a pretty good shape right now. You can use the low level or connectivity framework Neo4j Java driver in all of the big major Java frameworks in Spring, Quarkus, Micronaut and Helidon. You have excellent object mapping capabilities in form of Spring Data Neo4j inside the Spring ecosystem. You have Neo4j-OGM for Quarkus. You have an excellent database refactoring tooling for Quarkus and Spring. There are extensions and starters for it, but the core API is usable in any Java application, and it also comes with a native command line interface. In the last episode of Quarkus Insight at Red Hat, I showed one of my favorite ways to use Neo4j these days, in form of using just a driver, writing my own queries with a tool called Cypher-DSL. It's a type-safe generator for Cypher queries. You might want to check this out. I'm gonna link this episode and a couple of other resources, mainly projects that are publicly available on GitHub, in the description of this video. Check this out. And until then, have a great day, happy coding, and stay safe. Bye.